Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Morning was falling on Washington, D.C., in a light mist that enveloped the skyscrapers. The city seemed peaceful, but for Marcus Henderson, a high-ranking FBI official, every moment was fraught with responsibility. His files, his strategic meetings, and the constant pressure to protect the country were all part of his daily routine. That day, he had just come from a crucial meeting with the deputy director regarding a federal operation intended to protect thousands of civilians. Marcus, a man in his 40s, elegant in his dark suit, briefcase in hand, descended the steps of the federal building. His badge shone in the diffuse morning light, a symbol of his authority and his commitment to the law. He hadn't even had time to think about the day ahead when his routine was abruptly interrupted. A black patrol car appeared out of nowhere, blocking his lane. Two police officers jumped out quickly. One of them, Captain John Simmons, a man with a hard face and piercing eyes, stared at him suspiciously. "You are not allowed to pass through here," said Simmons, his voice firm but tinged with hostility. Marcus stopped, incredulous. He immediately handed over his badge and federal identification, hoping his authority would speak for itself. "I am Marcus Henderson, a senior FBI official. I need to get to my vehicle," he explained calmly. But Simmons looked away from the badge, as if he didn't see the obvious evidence in front of him. "It doesn't matter who you are," he replied, almost contemptuously. "Get out of your car." A chill ran through Marcus. He realized this wasn't just a simple administrative mix-up. Simmons' suspicion wasn't based on behavior or professional context, it was based on the color of his skin. Every word Simmons spoke was a silent attack on his identity and dignity. Passers-by began to stop, some pulling out their phones to film the scene. Marcus knew he had to remain calm. One wrong move could turn this unfair situation into a public catastrophe. But deep inside, a cold, silent anger was beginning to simmer. This simple stop would trigger a chain of events that no routine, no protocol, no power could halt. Marcus would discover that injustice could strike even those who seem most protected by the law, and that the real fight didn't begin at the police station, but in the minds of those who refused to give in to fear and prejudice. Marcus Henderson stood motionless, his eyes fixed on Captain John Simmons. Every fiber of his being refused to give in to humiliation, but the situation put him in an uncomfortable position, handcuffed on the sidewalk of a busy Washington, D.C. street, while passers-by stared at him, some shocked, others confused. "Sir," Marcus repeated calmly, but authoritatively, "why have I been arrested?" Simmons, his jaw clenched, searched his memory for a plausible excuse. After a moment of awkward silence, he murmured almost to himself. You fit a description." Marcus felt a simmering anger rising within him. He knew how the FBI operated, he knew how rigorous its profiling procedures were. And yet, this police officer had just ignored them all, allowing his judgment to be based solely on his skin color. "A description?" he asked, his tone icy. "A description of what?" "I just left a federal meeting, badge visible, official identification." "What are you treating me like a criminal for?" Simmons looked away, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. A few passers-by murmured amongst themselves, taking out their phones to film the scene. A woman in the crowd almost shouted, "Hey, he's with the FBI. Do you know what you're doing?" Marcus realized he was in the middle of a public spectacle, exposed to both the injustice and the absurdity of the situation. He felt his heart beat faster, but his voice remained calm and measured. "Captain Simmons," he said, "you are supposed to uphold the law, not break it. You are about to make a serious mistake, and you will be held accountable for it." Simmons, now red with shame and anger, hesitated. But his pride and prejudices prevented him from loosening his grip. The handcuffs were tightened further around Marcus's wrists, a cruel symbol of abusive power. As the patrol car approached to take Marcus to the station, he glanced one last time at the passers-by. Some looked at him with fear, others with disbelief. But deep down, Marcus knew one thing: this injustice would not go unpunished. He had to remain calm, strategic, and use every resource at his disposal to ensure that justice was served. The curtain of the day had just risen, and Marcus knew that this chapter of his life would not only be a personal ordeal, but a direct confrontation with racism and abuse of power in the city he served with devotion. The patrol car sped through the streets of Washington, D.C., each siren wailing like a cruel warning in Marcus Henderson's mind. His handcuffs rattled softly with every movement, a constant reminder of the injustice he was suffering. The silence in the back of the vehicle was heavy, almost oppressive. Simmons stared at Marcus with a mixture of defiance and doubt, unable to admit aloud what he had done. "You should have recognized my badge," Marcus said calmly, but his words were charged with cold determination. "You know exactly who I am." Simmons looked away. The seconds stretched on, heavy, each moment amplifying the humiliation. Marcus observed the outside world through the tinted windows, passers-by, cars, a city that continued its life as if nothing was happening, while a respected man from the FBI was being treated like an ordinary suspect. Upon arriving at the police station, Marcus was taken to an isolation cell. The cold metal walls and sterile air made him feel like he was in a parallel world where justice didn't exist. He immediately tried to use the phone to call the FBI, but the lines seemed to be down. Every attempt to contact him was blocked, reinforcing his sense of helplessness. Meanwhile, at FBI headquarters, concern was growing. Jennifer Collins, one of Marcus's closest colleagues, noticed his prolonged absence and the breakdown in communications. Reviewing the federal building's security cameras, she saw the moment Marcus had been arrested by the police. Her face hardened. "It's not possible," she murmured. "This is Marcus Henderson, a high-ranking official, and yet he was arrested?" She immediately triggered an internal alert. The news quickly reached the deputy director and other FBI officials. The offices were in turmoil. A member of the senior team had been arbitrarily detained by an outside police officer, and the reason appeared to be purely racial. In his cell, Marcus showed no emotion. Every minute was a calculation. He knew that anger, however intense, must not take over. He considered his next steps, how to use the situation to expose not only Simmons's mistake, but the systemic problem that allows such abuses to occur. Then there was a sound of footsteps. Simmons entered, his eyes betraying a sudden embarrassment, but his pride remained intact. Marcus stared at him. He knew the confrontation was inevitable, but he had to remain in control of the situation. That day, Marcus understood that injustice could strike even those who seemed most protected by their status, and that the only way to survive this ordeal was to transform his anger into strategy and action. The police station's interrogation room was cold, lit by a dim light that cast ominous shadows on the walls. Marcus Henderson, still handcuffed, sat facing Captain John Simmons. The air was thick with tension, every breath seemed to reverberate through the room like a war drum. "Captain," Marcus said in a calm but firm voice, "you know exactly who I am. You arrested a high-ranking FBI official based on mere prejudice. Do you know what that means?" Simmons looked away, searching through his papers for a pretext that could justify his actions, but there was none. He felt the weight of his guilt, and yet his pride prevented him from apologizing. You were suspicious," Simmons stammered. "You fit a description." Marcus slowly raised his eyes, his gaze piercing, full of disdain and control. "A description," he repeated, each word sharp as a blade. "You arrested an innocent man. Not just innocent, but a respected federal officer. You violated the law and your oath." Simmons stiffened, his face red with frustration and shame. Marcus continued. "Do you think your prejudices can replace justice? That your power allows you to decide who deserves respect and who doesn't? You're about to lose everything, Captain. Your career, your reputation, all because of a mistake based on the color of my skin." Silence fell in the room. Marcus showed no fear. Every word he uttered was calculated, measured, intended to strike Simmons where it would hurt the most, his ego and his professional integrity. "I will not be humiliated," Marcus concluded, "and I will make sure that justice is served. Everything you have done will be known, and you will be held accountable." Simmons, unable to respond, stepped back slightly. He knew Marcus was right. In this confrontation, the balance of power had shifted. The man he thought he could intimidate was now the one who held moral and legal control of the situation. A heavy silence fell, and Marcus knew that the first battle had been won. Not yet the war, but proof that injustice could be confronted, that dignity could be claimed even in the most humiliating adversity. Marcus was then allowed to make a call, and as soon as the FBI was informed, an internal investigation was launched. The confrontation was not yet over, but a clear message had been sent: prejudice could not prevail over law and truth. A few hours later, the phone at the police station rang. It was the FBI. The deputy director's firm, authoritative voice echoed through the office. "Captain Simmons, immediately terminate all detentions and prepare a full report on your actions." Simmons paled at the mention of Marcus Henderson's name. Reality hit him. The man he had arrested without justification was not only a high-ranking FBI official, but also a respected leader with enormous influence. Every second he spent denying the truth only worsened his position. Marcus was freed from the handcuffs. When he left the police station, he breathed deeply into the city air. Every passerby, every car seemed to be watching him, as if all of Washington recognized his regained dignity. "You have made a grave mistake," Marcus said to Simmons, his voice calm but sharp. "Your actions will be examined and your conduct judged. Law and honor cannot be trampled by your prejudices." Simmons, humiliated and powerless, could only nod. Marcus, on the other hand, turned towards the crowd of journalists who were beginning to arrive, alerted by the cameras and witnesses. He knew that this moment had to serve as an example. A few days later, the FBI publicly announced the opening of an investigation into Simmons's conduct. The news spread like wildfire through the media. A police officer had arbitrarily arrested a federal employee because of his skin color, and the justice system was restoring order. "Justice is not just a matter of law," Marcus declared at a press conference, "it is a matter of respect and human dignity. No prejudice, no fear can excuse the abuse of power." Simmons was suspended and his case was reviewed for severe disciplinary measures. Marcus regained his position at the FBI, but with a lesson etched in everyone's memory: true authority comes not from the power one possesses, but from how one uses it. Stepping outside the federal building, Marcus looked up at the Washington, D.C. sky, now clear and bright. For the first time since that morning, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Injustice had been confronted, and truth had prevailed. Dignity, his most powerful weapon, had restored balance.